Hello, and welcome to another episode of the RBL podcast. I remain your host, Ayo Ugidon. In the last episode, I mentioned about how I transitioned from the aviation sector to the real estate sector after a little over 2 years working with a firm in the aviation sector. Now, to continue on that, from that episode, I want to tell you the story of how I moved from the subprime market to selling A-list properties on the likes of Ikoyi, Lekki, Victoria Island. So immediately after I left the aviation sector, I was trying to get a job in the real estate sector, and I went to some real estate, the popular real estate companies back then, the likes of Jide Taiwo, Dia and the likes. And they all just kept asking about, do you have real estate experience? And I said no. Did you study estate management in school? I said no. So they were like, okay, we are sorry, unless you have experience, we're not willing to give you a job. So I decided to go freelancing on my own, just learn everything I could learn and then look for the opportunities available for me. So from then, I started telling people I was into real estate, even though I didn't have a single property under my portfolio. I mean, I was trying to get properties, but the opportunity just weren't coming. Until one day I was in church and then I sat beside someone, and in this person's hand was this book, How to Buy and Sell Properties in Nigeria. So I chatted him up. I started talking to him about real estate, and then he said yes, he was selling real estate for some property firms in the likes of Ogun State, Mowe or Fada back then. That's talking about, this was around 2007. So I said, okay, do you mind if I work with you? And he said, no problem. So from that day, I got access to over 5,000 plots of land in Mowe Bafo. So I started working with this guy and I was selling property. We would split the commission. But before I started selling, I mean, it took a while. It took a lot of trying to push, distributing flyers in the likes of banks, hospitals, any organization I could find. I would write my name and my phone number on this flyers and I would distribute. So after a while, I started getting calls. I started going for some inspections, and eventually the sales started coming in from friends and even some strangers. So from then on, I got an offer from a company that was looking for marketers who would help them sell the property they were trying to start in Moeba for. So they were trying to get people freelance for them. But then after an interview with them, the MD so liked me that he was like, I think this guy would work more for us as an internal salesperson rather than a freelance salesperson. So they sent me an offer. I looked at it, it looked okay, and then I joined them, and I worked with them for about eight months. And then from there, I started eyeing the high end properties, the likes of Ikoyi, and I thought it was very interesting. The property we were selling was, I mean, they were bungalows, three-bedroom bungalows, and they were around 8 million naira back then. But then I was looking at the likes of Ikoyi, and then I was hearing properties of 200 million, 300 million, and the likes. I thought, wow. I mean, it's people that are buying these properties. And I really would like to know how this kind of people think. I really would like to know what these properties that they're selling are made of and all those kind of things. So I started logging for them, and after a while, um, I started applying to some property companies in the likes of Ikoyi, VI, and so. And eventually, I got the opportunity, and then I went for the interview. And I remember that at the interview of one of these firms, one of the critical questions I was asked was, okay, so you are coming from a background where you're selling 8 million naira properties. How do you think you're going to be able to sell properties of around 200 million and the likes? And I told them point blank, look, as long as it's people that are buying these things, these properties, I know I will be able to sell because I mean, eventually it's still the same problem we're trying to solve: investments and then housing needs. So, I mean, I convinced them with everything in me, convinced them, and then they gave me the chance. So I started working with them, and yes, it was easier said than done. I started at the firm, and it wasn't easy to sell these properties. I mean, I combed through all my network, all my uncles, all my aunties. First of all, none of them could afford these properties, and then they didn't even know people. I mean, they could refer, but most of their friends couldn't afford this kind of properties. So it took me a while. In fact, I remember the MD of the firm one of those days called me. I was like, I am very disappointed in you. We really had high hopes for you, but here you are. You're not able to sell. Well, we're not going to fire you immediately, but we're going to keep you on basic salary and all. I was so scared, but I kept at it. I kept pushing. I kept pushing, and then eventually, one day I got the opportunity to sell my first $1 million property. It was for a property off Queens Drive in Ikoyi. I mean, it was so amazing to experience. First of all, meet somebody that could afford a $1 million property. $1 million back then was 160 million naira. This was around 2011, 2012. And I mean, we had series of meetings and all that. And eventually I was able to close on this transaction. And that shut me up within the organization, that I moved from where I was, and it got to a point where even the chairman of the firm said, I want to work with this guy personally. So I mean, I guess the moral of the story is just that whatever you are into, whatever you're trying to achieve, don't give up. Keep at it, keep pushing, be tenacious, and eventually you're going to get the result that you want. To get this story and more stories, I have an ebook called My Sales Perspective. This story, in more details, is in this book, and some other stories about my sales experience. You would see the link on Seller to buy this book uh, down below. Follow it, please buy, and I'm sure you would learn and you would enjoy it. Remember, please subscribe for more stories like this, for more business ideas, real estate concepts, and all the likes, which is what we share on RBL. I'm happy to take your comments, questions below. I would gladly respond to them. And until next time, God bless.